News 8. This is breaking news.
Good afternoon. I'm Lauren McCoy with this breaking news. People in parts of Uptown near Tulane University's campus are dealing with street flooding, even flooding getting into some cars near Audubon and Willow Streets. That's where we find Chris Joseph, who is live near Tulane's campus. Chris, what's the update now?
Yeah, we're at the intersection of Willow and Audubon. You can see the water just pouring behind me, blocks on end into Tulane's campus. Again, this is a water main break that the Sewage and Water Board has identified. No official report yet of a boil water advisory, but if you've lived in the city, you know a water main break leads to reduced pressure, leads to a potential boil water advisory. It does not appear that that has been announced yet. It's unclear what may exactly happen in the future. As for official response, you've got Sewage and Water Board staff here. In fact, if we move the camera potentially, sorry, this is live streaming, folks, here. You've got Steve Nelson. He's the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer of the city over Public Works. He monitors the situation. We expect to hear from him in just a little bit. He used to be in a top position over at the Sewage and Water Board, so he is read in on this situation. As for what exactly the timeline is for repairs here, we don't know. We did get an opportunity to speak with Councilwoman Amy McCarron over District A. She is the councilwoman for this area. She spoke with the Sewage and Water Board, provided what little information she could that they're attempting to shut off a valve. And ultimately, they're going to need to be able to make repairs. But again, you see the situation behind me, water flowing several blocks down the road. I will say this, however, the water does seem to have reduced a little bit since we have been here, at least along the high ground. You can kind of see it receding down to the crevices a little bit, but still a pretty dramatic situation. A whole lot of water where it's not supposed to be, in the middle of the street because of a water main, at least the third major water main break in the city just in the last few weeks.
Chris, if you can hear me now, what I find interesting is that they had that other water main break earlier this week, and that was in Carrollton and Panola, and now you are near Tulane University's campus. They have a big book festival coming up. You could see students out there. Yep. They're telling people to avoid the area. I did see some people on even playing in the water, which you're not supposed to do.
No, college kids will be college kids, and we don't condone that, obviously, but we did see one individual getting on a board and trying to ride the water here. So yes, again, if you're familiar with the Sewage and Water Board water main situation, then you'll know, again, this is not the first time this has happened, and certainly not the first time this has happened in recent memory. If you go back to Tuesday's Public Works meeting, there was a comment made by Councilwoman Amy McCarron about how there was concerns about this area, and lo and behold, here we are. So we are going to get in position here. I believe Steve Nelson, again, the Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for the city of New Orleans, a former leader of the Sewage and Water Board, is going to address the press here in a second. So we're just going to kind of get into position. You can see him with the team right now. So we'll wait to hear from him in a second. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, Chris, while you do that, I'm just going to give the people out there just an update on what we know so far while you get set up with that. Again, another water main break, this time uptown near Tulane University's campus, and this where Chris is Audubon and Willow Streets. So right now, no boil water advisory has been put into effect. Amy McCarron, council member, had told Chris Joseph earlier that she doesn't know if or when that will happen, but this specific area, she said, was a very, very watchful area. She's been keeping a watch on this area because it's been frustrating. As you can see, the pumps just kept going and going and going, but Chris Joseph says that the water has receded. This water main break is the 6th since the start of this year from what we have reported. And again, there was a water main break earlier this week that they had a boil water advisory for, had to lift that. But the Sewage and Water Board has been pretty vocal about the aging water system in New Orleans, 100-plus-year-old pipes, 34% of them, right? And 1,600 miles of line. So it's a lot to look after, but the fact that these have been happening since the beginning of the year, and it seems like it's been all of the time, has people with questions, of course. The council members know about it. The city knows about it. There is a plan to get something done about this, but as you know, the city is dealing with budget issues. And I'm just hearing from the control room right now, just to tell you guys, Sewage and Water Board says that they are not anticipating for a boil water advisory, but we are about to get Steve Nelson right now. He is the City of New Orleans Deputy of Infrastructure and Public Works. Let's see what he has to say.
You need me to hold one?
No, you good. Stand up for guys' questions.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm here, Steve Nelson, Deputy CAO of Infrastructure, Director of Public Works for the City of New Orleans. I'm here at the behest of the mayor. I know the Sewage and Water Board is on their way. I've spoken with a couple of members of the Sewage and Water Board. This is a break on a 30-inch line. There's one of 3 major transmission mains coming out of the Sewage and Water Board's Carrollton Water Treatment Plant. I know the board is working right now to isolate this leak. They will have to install the components of a temporary valve, which is probably going to take the next 24 to 36 hours to have that fully installed. We understand that Bookfest is going on this weekend. My understanding is that their pressures are holding steady. We have not dropped below 20 psi at this point, so no boil water advisory at this point, which is a major concern. And I know the board has taken every step they can thus far to reduce the flow. I know they've dropped some of the speed on the pumps at the Carrollton plant, and I know the flow has gone down some. Storm drainage should be able to catch up as we move along, but we will probably continue to see water in the street here for the next 24 to 36 hours.
Do you know when this break occurred specifically?
I don't know specifically. Well, all I know is the information that started to come to me on my phone as of about 30, 45 minutes ago. I believe this specific break was probably today, but I don't have a specific time on when it's really took off.
And do you have any sense on timeline of repairs at this point?
They're going to have to dig it up and see what it is. I think their first point of emphasis is getting the leak isolated. Like I said, that's probably going to take the next day to be able to get that temporary valve installed, and then they're going to have to dig it up and see, is it a leaking joint? My guess is, and it's purely speculation, is that it's another failure in the main. So they've been able to repair the 48-inch mains within a day or two, so I would not expect this to take much longer than that, but it'll depend on whether the failure is.
Councilwoman McCarran highlighted this area, or at least another leak just down the way, as a potential issue. To what extent was it on the city's radar and the Sewage and Water Board's radar as something that could potentially lead to something like this?
Yeah, I'm sure that the board is aware of it. I would only be speculating about the cause and effect related between these 2 points. But as we are all aware of, there are a lot of breaks going on right now, and there's a lot of factors that play into that. And I'm sure their focus is on getting the system stabilized and looking to assess the system, especially close to the Carrollton Water Plant where we've seen these catastrophic failures.
Yeah, we've heard that they need to do an audit of the system and assess the system before they can come up with a diagnosis and specific repair plans. I mean, can you speak as to why there hasn't been an assessment or an audit done yet?
Yeah, with the specific testing, it's what I understand is it's an ultrasonic sensor they put into the pipe. I know that they have talked to the IAB about it, the Infrastructure Advisory Board, so using that as a source of funding is something that I know they're looking at doing, and that's something they're going to be expediting and making happen as quickly as possible.
Do you know the age of this pipe or this main?
This main itself, I don't have that off the top of my head, but I do believe it's about the same age as the other pipes that have been failing, somewhere in the neighborhood of 80 to 100 years old.
Any idea on when we could expect the water to stop flowing into the street?
Yeah, so that's where I was mentioning that temporary valve. Because the existing valve upstream is broken, they've got to be able to install that temporary valve. That should take the next 24 to 36 hours.
So we should expect water to continue flowing?
Probably for the next day.
Currently, where are all of the crews stationed at? I know we had the one earlier near Panola Street. We are currently having crews come out here. Where are all of our crews positioned right now?
Yeah, so there's a lot of contractor effort on these larger mains. I know Sewage and Water Board's internal crews will handle breaks on mains from 6 inches to 12 inches. Once you get up into these 30 and 48-inch lines, it's usually a contractor. Bow Brothers is working over on Panola right now. I did hear from the board they're going to continue to work on that break on the 30-inch line on Magnolia. That's not going to stop. So they'll be the contractors should be bringing in additional crews to make repairs.
Yeah, Steve, to build off that question, the NOLA Ready text came out an hour ago. All the press are here, neighbors are here, but I don't see any major crews. Is that normal?
So at this point, installing that temporary valve and being able to shut off the water is the first thing that they need to do. If they were to dig on that line right now, you would probably be creating more issues than you'd solve. You're going to destabilize the soil. We don't want to have any other issues with the sidewalk, with the trees, other utilities. So digging right now would not be a good idea. Until they get that leak isolated, you don't want to disturb it any further.
Are the repairs and the isolation of the leaks at all complicated by the other previous breaks that we've seen recently?
It certainly doesn't help when you have those multiple breaks. The contractor crews, they're going to have the right number of personnel. My understanding is they have them. The big complicating factor here is that broken valve upstream. So being able to get that temporary valve installed is the key.
What will it take to keep this from happening again from the city's perspective?
Well, I know that the Sewerage and Water Board has talked about a larger capital program. I know that they're working on that. That assessment piece is really critical to being able to understand where the weakest points are within the system, and working to install liners and do things as cost effectively as possible is going to be really, really important. And having that assessment is going to be helpful in determining exactly where those repairs take place.
Has the discussion of an assessment been ongoing for some time, or did it just come up recently? I mean, how long has it been talked about doing an assessment?
Yeah, we have talked about that at the board since my time there, having some of that testing done. There is a chapter within the Water Quality Master Plan that talks about the age of the pipes. But putting in sensors is something that needs to be the next step, and that's something we have discussed, but the board's going to take action on that imminently, I'm sure.
The city is obviously hurting for funds. GIR funds have been used for 11 projects, or at least that was the plan. Where does the money come from to maybe do a whole-scale correction or proactive effort on this?
Yeah, I mean, that's a question for state, federal, and local partners. Everybody's got to work together on that. I know the executive director was up in D.C. Lobbying for funds. I know there's been a request for earmarks for funds, and I know that the state wants to be involved in the solution as well. So I think it's going to take everybody working together to pull in the same direction.
Are funding challenges actually also an obstacle just to doing the assessment? Is that why it hasn't been done yet, to your knowledge?
Funding is always part of the discussion, and again, I think that IAB, IMF money, the fair share dollars, are going to be critical to making sure that happens.
We also have Amy McCarron here, Councilwoman for District 8.
Hey everyone, I'm happy. I've spoken to a couple of you guys already, but I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have for me.
Have you got an opportunity to speak with any Sewage and Water Board leaders since we last spoke?
Not yet. No, I've only talked to Steve Nelson, who is the Deputy CAO of Infrastructure, and he explained a little bit of what's happening. I anticipate that Caitlin and hopefully Randy will be on site soon.
Have you all discussed any possible funding regarding future projects?
No, I mean, you saw at the Public Works Committee, Councilmember Hughes, who was the chair of that committee, and myself and Matthew Willard also questioned Sewage and Water Board about what's the plan, because we can't advocate for additional funds at the state or federal level or even at the city level until we know what the actual plan is to prevent these things and continue to fix these things.
This isn't the first time that you've had to attend a water main break. I mean, you spoke with several constituents. What are they asking you? What are the answers that they're asking you that you're hoping to get, maybe haven't received quite yet?
Yeah, I mean, this is a block away from the location I mentioned at the Public Works Committee meeting on Willow and Calhoun, where there was water gushing out, and it's been a leak that we have been reporting to Sewage and Water Board for weeks now and months, and actually previously to Councilmember Giarrusso when he was the council member for this district. So it's been going on for a long time. People are frustrated. I'm frustrated, and we need answers, and we need to figure out how Sewage and Water Board is prioritizing these leaks and getting them fixed.
Do you think this changes the conversation in Baton Rouge about oversight? Obviously, your colleague and the mayor were up there. Do you think this, excuse the term, but ammunition for that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, look, we are the ones as council members and the city that get all the heat from Sewage and Water Board, but we have no direct oversight, so we can't force them to do anything. If we had that more control, then it might be something that we have more leverage with budgeting and other tools that we can force them to get these things fixed.
Do you think the city council ought to consider rate hikes to pay for the water system?
I mean, I don't want to speculate on that until we have control and understand what that looks like. Obviously, the City Council, we are having to deal with an affordability crisis on many points, so we're going to have to really consider a lot of different things.
This occurred right next to Tulane University, and there's a host of administrators there. TUPD's been blocking the streets. Have you been coordinating with the university, and what role has the university played in the response to this break specifically?
So actually, the first call we got was from someone with Tulane about this break about probably 2 hours ago. I'd have to look at the timeline on my cell phone, but someone from Tulane reported this to us.
Anybody else?
One more question. Yeah. So at the last break, we spoke with an individual. They were a volunteer just cleaning out some of the drains. They said that there's not enough assistance from the city to be able to clean out some of those drains. What do you want them to know just about making sure that those services are being provided on their streets and keeping the floods from kind of building up?
Yeah, so the responsibility of cleaning the catch basins is actually through Sewage and Water Board, which that is something that the state legislature made that change last year. But maybe that's another thing that we might need to look at putting back under the city so we have more responsibility and more leverage over it.
Thank you, Councilwoman. Appreciate that. All right, well, there you have it. Steve Nelson, Deputy Chief Administrative Officer for the City of New Orleans, speaking about the water main break here. And you just heard from Councilwoman Amy McCarron. She's over District A, which is this neck of the woods, this part of the city. So a few key items to take away. If you're concerned about a boil water advisory, something that the city has unfortunately suffered a few different times in the last few weeks, at this point, there is no indication that that will come down. Of course, that situation may change. That's just something you're going to have to monitor. As for the water in the roadway, if you're in and around the Tulane area, the water might be here for some time. They are working to drain it. And as for repairs themselves, again, that timeline really remains to be seen. But you heard Steve Nelson speak about digging up this area right now. The first job, he said, is to identify the leak, get the water out, because if you dig here at this intersection, you'd, in his own words, create additional issues, dig up additional soil, perhaps create further damage. Now, if you've been following the Sewage and Water Board discussion in this area for some time now, you'll know that just 48 hours ago, Councilwoman McCarron, who you just heard from, referenced a spot really just a block away on Willow Street where there had been significant flooding. In fact, Fox 8 was there just yesterday, and the water was spewing out into the road, certainly nothing like this. Hearing from Steve Nelson, who, again, Deputy CAO over the city, but also formerly held a leadership position with the Sewage and Water Board, he said, you know, it's unclear if surrounding factors or surrounding leaks may have compounded this situation. We just don't know what correlation leaks nearby may or may not have had on this situation, but it's without question that the Sewage and Water Board was pushed in this direction by Councilwoman McCarron and likely others at least 48 hours ago, if not sooner, to address piping issues in this area. But again, here we are. You can see it. We'll give you a look at the intersection here if you're just joining us. Block down Audubon here. You can see the water. Again, thankfully, it looks like it's lowered. It was higher up on the vehicles a few minutes ago. It does seem to be going down, which is the good news, but still covering the street, a block basically in every direction. We have not seen, at least from this intersection, any significant home flooding. Some basement units may have gotten some water in them, but again, thankfully, a lot of the homes in this area seem to be elevated. This is definitely a college neighborhood. We were speaking with some college students earlier. They're making the most of it. You know, they're having fun, playing in the water. Not that, you know, we necessarily recommend that for well-being, but, you know, the kids, the college kids seem to be, you know, doing the best they can with it, taking it with a grain of salt and trying to make the most out of an otherwise probably headache of a situation. So, again, to recap some of the big points, if you're concerned about a boil water advisory, has not been announced at this point. Unclear if it will. Steve Nelson with the city, he's the Deputy CAO over Public Works, says that the pressure has remained steady for the time being. Water pressure, if you follow this issue, you'll know is the big driver of boil water advisories, certainly in the last few weeks. And in terms of repairs for the Tulane area, again, they need to isolate the water, get this area effectively dried out, and then they'll be able to dig up. The timeline really remains to be seen, but if you'll remember on the Claiborne issue, the Claiborne water main break a few weeks ago, it took several days. They had to dig up the road pretty significantly, pave it over, get the new pipe in, and move forward from there. The big item, of course, is going to be solutions moving forward. If you watch Tuesday's story, Chris Welty reported on the Sewage and Water Board meeting. The big item is, what is the plan? Council members challenged Randy Heyman, the executive director, to come with a plan in hand. In fact, one council member said, I need to be able to go to Baton Rouge or Washington, D.C. and say this item costs this amount of money, and be able to argue effectively for that to get the funds to perhaps do more proactive work on this system to keep this from happening again. Heyman vowed that that would happen. He also vowed to do acoustic testing, so to see where some of the weaker points are. If you watch that presentation, you'll know a significant percentage of the city's pipes are over 100 years old. Now, the city has gotten federal funds in the past to address some of these issues in select locations. FEMA has identified throughout the city to replace some of the transmission lines, and that work has been done. But clearly, the pace of proactive work has not kept pace with the aging and failure of the pipes, and you see it manifesting right now. So it's going to be a hot button issue, both for the city council, obviously Mayor Moreno early in her first term, and of course Executive Director Randy Heyman, who just took over in July but has already faced a series of crises, this just being the latest, adding fuel to the fire. What is going to be done to keep these water mains, these large water mains, from bursting and pouring water all over the city and putting the city potentially in a boil water advisory? So certainly a lot to chew on here moving forward, but we're going to be monitoring it, watch at 4 and 5, and happy to answer any questions about what we see out here as well.
Yeah, Chris, thank you for that breakdown of what's happening. I just want people to know where you are if they're just clicking in here. You are near Tulane University's campus on Audubon and Willow Streets. You just talked to Steve Nelson, who is the Deputy CAO of Infrastructure and Public Works, and he says that this is, he didn't know the exact age of this specific pipe, but he said it was between 80 to 100 years old possibly, and that it was a 30-inch pipe. So the reason why we're not seeing people there on the scene, he was saying that it takes an outside contractor to deal with pipes of certain stature and certain inches. So we were saying earlier that we didn't see a lot of Sewage and Water Board out there. I heard other reporters and you even say, like, where are they? And that was his explanation. But like you said, Chris, it's the funding at the end of the day.
Yeah, money is clearly going to have to be the driver here. You know, again, as we just referenced, the city has, or the Sewage and Water Board has in the past, been able to access federal funds to proactively replace transmission lines. If you look at a presentation from Tuesday, and again, we'll hammer this all through this stream. If you want to learn about this issue, watch the Sewage and Water Board presentation from the City Council Public Works Committee meeting on Tuesday. There's a whole PowerPoint, a lot of back and forth with City Council. But the gist, or one of the big takeaways, is just how old this system is. A large percentage, and I don't want to say it offhand because I don't want to be wrong here, but a significant percentage of pipes over 100 years old, and that speaks for itself at increased risk. And so where does the city get the money to replace these pipes? If you've lived in the city, you'll know the city is struggling financially and just to make ends meet with salaries. So the odds of the city being able to leverage large amounts of cash to replace transmission lines, specifically the older ones throughout the city, you know, remains to be seen. So can the leadership here in New Orleans go to Baton Rouge, convince lawmakers to perhaps allocate money, right, to get this done from a state level? Or does it take going to Washington, D.C., Congressman Carter, Senator Kennedy, Senator Cassidy potentially stepping in, leveraging their resources in D.C. to get the money to potentially come through the city? Again, all that remains to be seen. But session just began 72 hours ago in Baton Rouge. Mayor Moreno, Council President J.P. Morrell were in there. They were advocating for Sewage and Water Board reform. If you heard Councilwoman McCarran just a moment ago, she was making the argument that the City Council needs to be able, and I'll get out of the way here so you can kind of see what's playing out. The City Council needs to be able to leverage increased power over the Sewage and Water Board. And this gets really into the weeds a little bit, but the Sewage and Water Board is in many ways a separate entity. So it has its own governing board. Now, the mayor is the chair of that board, and there are representatives on that board that the City Council has input on, but in many ways, they don't answer, so to speak, to the city council like Entergy New Orleans does, right? So the question becomes, is it the city council's prerogative, or do lawmakers want it to make it the city council's prerogative to oversee the finer details of the Sewerage and Water Board? And if that's the case and the city council gets that power, then in many ways the onus comes onto them. How do they help leverage the resources both in the city, the state, and the nation to keep this from happening again? Because it's unfortunately become a trend in these last few weeks. So you're absolutely right, Lauren. Money will be the solution here, one way or the other, as to what's next.
And Chris, what I find interesting as well is from what we've reported, this would be the 6th water main break in the city of New Orleans since the beginning of this year. And if you live in the city and having to deal with all the boil water advisories, and it's kind of like some residents, some constituents of Amy McCarran saying, like, it's like you can't even keep up. But the solution, I know they've come up with different solutions, especially with these aging and these old pipes. They even talked about liners. They talked about getting, again, a larger capital program that Nelson was talking about. There's so many things that go into fixing such an old city pipe system. 1,600 miles of pipe, according to Sewage and Water Board. And you were talking about that percentage of the oldest pipes. Over 30% are 100 years old. So that kind of puts it into perspective for people. But first, Monday, we had the Panola and Carrollton water main break, and then we have this one. But to viewers out there who are just tuning in and just clicking in here to this stream, right now, there have been no boil water advisories just yet. So we have Chris Joseph out at the scene. We have more crews going out to that scene. But again, another water main break, this time near Tulane University's campus at Audubon and Willow Streets. They're telling people to stay away. If you're not in their area, you do not need to go to that area. But we will keep you updated. We are trying to get as many answers as possible. Right now, they don't know what caused it. And they are currently working on the Carrollton water treatment plant to stop this, but they have to get to the bottom of this problem. So we will continue to keep you updated here on Fox 8 News at 4 and 5, and also on our website and our Fox 8 News app. For now, live in studio, I'm Lauren McCoy.